revolution with no man control.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Sound Off, where we talk about everything from music to hot topics of today. Joining us tonight, we've got Robbie Davidson, Doug Kirshner, Elijah Rust, and our special guest tonight, Thomas Dunn. What up, everyone? How you guys doing tonight?
Doing good, man.
Doing good. Well,
it's good to be back.
It is good to be. Yeah, it is good for you to be back with us. We only have time for about an hour tonight, so we're going to be breaking up. What we're doing tonight. Tonight is part 2 of watching the Hell's Bells, and we're going to probably pause after about 15 minutes, so that way we get some good discussion in with Tom. And we're going to take away from that. Tom, have you seen the whole documentary before?
You know what? I think I've seen a pretty long version of it years ago.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the 6-hour version. We're like 45 minutes in, and what we've done in the last one, we kind of paused it after about 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, started talking about it. We're going to do that again tonight. And last time it was really lively. Doug and Robbie kind of just like went at it for a while. So much so that Johnny didn't want to be on tonight's show.
He's coming in late. He'll probably make it.
He's coming in late to see if it's not fighting. But without further ado,
bad.
It was that bad. It was.
Chris, man, he can't be serious most of the time, so you can.
Right.
So we're going to jump right in. We're 45 minutes in. We're going to pick up, not waste any more time tonight. But before we do anything here, I actually have one quick thing that I have to do announcement-wise. We have the 2022 virtual conference right here, Take on the World TV, and it is coming September 17th through the 20th. We have everything from sessions on discovery, what we're calling discovery, to discipleship aspects. So that's going to encompass so many different topics. And then we actually have a few debates that we're working on. One is fully complete, and we're working on the other ones right now. So we're going to have a night of discussion and debate of how believers should be able to discuss topics that maybe they don't agree on and how that should look towards the body. So it's going to be some really hot topic stuff, but really, hopefully at the end of the day, nobody is yelling like Doug and Robbie. It's all going to be all good. So,
oh my gosh.
So we're going to actually have Robbie and Doug just go at it for about 2 hours at the conference, and you guys will not want to miss that. So without further ado, guys, we are jumping into Hell's Bells 2. This is not Hell's Bell 1, it's Hell's Bell 2, and we are 45 minutes in. You can find this free on YouTube. It's all over the place now. This video was taking place in the 1990s, so the music is a little dated, but the premise and the point of what is being talked about still applies, and we're going to talk about whether this stuff is anything of relevancy and our opinions on it. So without further ado, here we go. Just have to play this fair use, and then we're going to get right to the 45-minute mark.
Influence over us. But first, it's important to also note that what music can do to the individual, it can do to their entire culture. And this is why, from philosophers to rulers, revolutionaries to network and marketing executives, Plato's observation in the Republic has been echoed time and again. When modes of music change, the fundamental laws of the state change with them.
In another work, Plato could have been writing about our modern age when he stated, "Through foolishness they, the people, deceived themselves into thinking that there was no right or wrong in music, that it was to be judged good or bad by the pleasure it gave. As it was, the criterion was not music, but a reputation for promiscuous cleverness and a spirit of law-breaking." Plato's contemporary Aristotle, observing music's power to form character, to in some cases encourage self-control, while in others provoke abandonment, advised that music actually be regulated by the state. 18th century Scottish writer, orator, and parliamentarian Andrew Fletcher echoed Plato and Aristotle when he declared that, if a man were permitted to make all the ballads, he need not care who should make the laws of a nation. A modern fulfillment of Fletcher's observation can be seen in the vast cultural changes that took place in America and much of the West during the 1960s.
Rock and roll was the beginning of the brand new world in terms of a generation bringing on its own consciousness through music to other generations.
So music was like the Pied Piper that led kids off the asphalt and out of the suburbs and into some other kind of reality.
Albert Goldman, pop culture analyst and best-selling author, goes so far as to call that decade's popular music the most important cultural event in the history of America.
It's like an earthquake. It just shook the whole country, and it cracked open the shell of what had been society before that, and outswarmed a whole new generation of freaks.
Leading these freaks were organizations like the Black Panthers, Students for a Democratic Society, and the Youth International Party, the Yippies, embracing not only communist ideology, but also the Marxist-Leninist credo that music was to be used as a weapon to achieve particular socio-political ends. Songs became the driving force of the revolution.
Point two is total assault on the culture by any means necessary, including rock and roll dope in the streets.
Jerry Rubin, co-founder of the Yippie movement and one of the infamous Chicago Seven, authored the bestseller Do It, a book that was called by its publisher, quote, the Communist Manifesto of our era, a declaration of war between the generations, calling on kids to leave their homes, burn down their schools, and create a new society upon the ashes of the old.
See, we don't want to be responsible. We're irrational. We're irrational and crazy.
In a chapter titled Elvis Presley Killed Ike Eisenhower, Rubin described the spark that lit the fire of the revolution. The new left sprang from Elvis' gyrating pelvis. Hard animal rock energy beat surged hot through us, the driving rhythm arousing repressed passions. Rubin went on to observe the role technology rather ironically played in making this revolution possible. Affluent culture, by producing a car and a car radio for every middle-class home, gave Elvis a base for recruiting. While a car radio in the front seat rocked, young kids in the back seat were having sex to the hard rock beat. The back seat produced the sexual revolution, and the car radio was the medium for subversion. 30 years later, Rubin's communist revolution has largely been passed up in favor of rank, whatever makes you happy materialism.
Because everyone loves a twofer.
Bye, Teddy. Bye, cutie.
But music's influence has only become more powerful and more widespread. The low-fidelity car radio of the 60s has given place to digital technologies, surround sound and personal.
So let's jump in there real quick. What do you guys think of what was being talked about there? You know, from the 60s. One thing he didn't talk about was, the history of this, which I'm sure it's going to happen. With Elvis Presley and the shaking of the hips and kicking off sort of that generation. What do you guys think of, that era, looking at guys like, ushering that free sex drug revolution of what Aleister Crowley wanted? Where do you guys see the legitimacy to what was being proposed there?
Well, look at our world today, right? I mean, I think it's 100%. These guys, when they were doing these writings, were talking about kind of like how marijuana is a gateway drug that will lead open to a lot of other, substances. It's almost like music. We look at it and we used to go, oh my goodness, Elvis, it was so tame compared to what we've seen. But now we're shocked at what we're seeing today in culture. But again, this was all a grand plan. And now, watching this, so many years later and seeing the fact that they're talking about the Communist Manifesto, we're seeing it play out in politics right on full stage now. It's not just in the music and it's not just alternative music. It has taken over the culture war right now. I mean, they would be very proud on what was achieved. I just think it's incredible how we're watching this all play out and how it was introduced very tamely. But again, all the people that were warning about what was going to happen if this was brought into a society from the mode of music being changed, that one quote I think is so powerful. Say, whoever makes the songs or the music, who cares who makes the laws? I think it's very clear. You can see that happening. While the laws were like, certain things were illegal, it didn't matter. All the music could do it. All Hollywood could show it all the time. People smoking drugs, having sex, no problem. There was no penalties for that. But yet these things were crimes. So I think it is a way that they've broken through and they have subversed the culture. And it's a very serious stage at where we're at now. I can't see how far it goes, but that's what I have to say on that part.
I mean, honestly, I look at it like this. We've been in Babylon. We've always been in Babylon. Since probably the situation with George Floyd, we had coasted through what would have been the 1969 era. So wherever we're at in time, we're in the same time frame as that. Musically, just sin-wise, everything's just, the door's just open to everything now. And there's nothing new under the sun, basically. So we're just repeating that time frame. We just have different medias of promoting that time frame. We have Facebook, YouTube, all the social media aspects. And I mean, music is progressively getting worse. There really isn't anything good out there musically in today's society. It's all just about control of the youth. So, I mean, I agree. I just say that the mode of transportation back then was, what we saw with the people from like the hippie free sex movement was that they were actually, I would say, possessed. If you ever watched the Woodstock video, which I have, they had to have been possessed with some of the stuff that went on in that festival. I mean, I've watched Doors concerts and thought, man, I need to take a shower.
Yeah. I mean, his own bandmates said that it was a demon inside him that had took control of him. So that's what I like about these documentaries is the fact that a lot of the times, if you notice, all these quotes, all these people that they're referring to, they're not Christian. These are secular observers in their industries. That's why I've always appreciated Hell's Bells too, because there's no Christian. It's not like R.C. Sproul comes out and he has his say. And, all these different other people. It's all secular observations. And when we get into spirituality, it's even more alarming because these are secular observers based on what they're seeing spiritually and what took place. But number one, it was rebellion. Rock and roll was 100% rebellion, and it led to the destruction of the family. So many things we're seeing today in culture, 100%. But let's continue on. Elijah, Tom?
Real quick, I'll just say I think it's interesting. They're showing some of these Elvis Presley videos and just how the girls are reacting to him. But for someone like you and I looking back at this, it's maybe not as shocking as nearly as some of the stuff you see now in like music videos and live performances and all that. And, just to think how they've slowly over time desensitized us, especially when it comes to like the sexualization of our culture, and like taking, just one step at a time, taking one more step and making it just a little bit worse and just, let's, just see if we can push the boundaries just a little bit more. And you see that, over time from like the beginning there with all this all the way till now. And like most of the music videos you can't even watch now, because they're just so over the top. So.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of things that could be said about this. What I want to say is music is a tool, and it can be used for good or for bad. We're seeing on this program, and it's been a while, and since I've seen this, I remember the old one better, the Hell's Bells one, but we're seeing all of the examples of how music was used for rebellion, to incite sexuality, to provoke sexuality. I would say that, and I'm not in defense of rock and roll, but I want to give an honest analyzation. Maybe for every band that had an agenda, there were so many bands back then that just made a song about, something silly. We could just like list all of the silly songs, from back then, and guys, standing in a microphone, whether, in front of a microphone, all in a suit, dressed the same way, coming forward. Now, obviously, nowadays, at least the music was good back then. Today, it's not even good. And I think of Francis Schaeffer because he talked about when you can tell when a society is falling apart because art starts to suck real bad. Yeah. Okay. And he uses examples in history of, where the art's not even good on the money. Okay. That's how bad the society was suffering. And I think that's a good, a good gauge that we can say, wow, we're really hurting because these kids, I don't even know what to say. They seem to like this, this music. And I know the cliches. Well, when you get old, you always hate the next generation's music. No. This music sucks. This music now that's coming out is horrible. Okay. And even the kids now that know anything about music are going back to the 80s and listening, going backwards, that appreciate music. And a lot of that stuff, yeah, it's dark, but it's not as blatant as it is now. I have so many things to say about this. I think it's important to understand that music can be dangerous, spiritually dangerous. And then I think it can also be neutral. All right. But there's an agenda from the powers that be, and we talk about the powers that be on shows like yours and shows like mine. And they're going to push those guys, you know what I'm saying, that have the agenda, that can move, and we could talk about this, the book Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that book by David McGowan. He documented all of these musicians showing up in Laurel Canyon in California, and they had direct ties to military intelligence. Not their dad was in the army. Their dad was in high-level military intelligence. The first one that comes to mind is, Jim Morrison's dad. But I'm telling you what, he documents right down the line all these musicians from the 60s. And it's really uncanny how they show up there, and then how, in a way, that they hijacked the peace movement, okay? Nothing really happened. They just had a lot of concerts and smoked a lot of dope. But the theory is that the government wanted to hijack that movement so the people didn't rise up. Okay, well, hey, just give them music and they won't, nothing really crazy will happen. Anyway, I'm babbling, but I just want to.
That's a good point.
I just really quick want to say something on that aspect with Laurel Canyon. Almost every top musician from that era came out of Laurel Canyon. You had the Doors, you had Tom Petty, you had Dylan, you had Mamas and the Papas, you had all these artists that came out from that area that were some of the biggest bands and still are.
That's the big thing, I think, with a documentary, or even that point that Tom just brought up. There is a correlation between the largest artists and bands of every decade. You see a correlation, not just with some weird ties like being put in place for a specific reason. You see like a subversion, but also a very spiritual aspect to it as well, where they got these weird spiritual connections going on, claiming they're talking to spirits, and they're all like, that's the thing about these documentaries. You'll hear it from their own words that they're saying, look, man, this is, I wish I could take credit for the song I wrote. I can't. It's like some spirit entered me and wrote the song, and I didn't do any of it. Like, you see it over and over and over. So there's so many different layers to this, the CIA and the government and stuff. That's really, really intriguing. And that's one level, but then you get spiritual, then you get like emotional, and it's amazing when you get into all these different levels on how deep this runs. But for anyone not to be able to see that, like, all the biggest artists and the ones that go mainstream and become the stars and the idols for culture, they've got a 100% anti-God and an anti-biblical with everything that they write or anything that they do. You never, ever see someone rise to the top that is the opposite of what, the culture wants to create them as. So,
well, I have a question for Tom real quick. So in that neutrality of the music, is there a possibility that there is a deception within that neutrality to lead to the spiritual dangerous?
I think, I definitely think there is. We could find, for example, I don't know. I don't have any examples right now, but there's a lot of bands that have dark music, but they are lured in with the hook of a song that's neutral. But then you hear the other stuff, you know what I'm saying? And I could honestly examine the lyrics and say, you know what? There's nothing spiritually dark about this song. But when you get the album,
wouldn't you say the
there's
Beatles
a lot of darkness, okay? Again, I don't want to come off as defending any of this music. I want to analyze it honestly, and I could be very wrong. I agree with what you're saying, Chris. I think there can be a hook, and I think sometimes that people see the musicians, they want to make it big, and they grow kind of on their own outside of that Hollywood system. They weren't necessarily handpicked, but then they get close enough to it that they get recruited. Okay. If I sat and thought about it hard enough, maybe we could all think of a band that would and say, okay, this band was probably definitely not part of that system. I don't know. Maybe we could come up with a few of them. I don't want to be the guy that says every single one of these guys or every single one, whatever band or artist, every single one of them, they're Satanists. They're all in on it. I don't believe they're all in on it.
Oh yeah, that's
Well, let's jump in. Here we are. We're going to jump in, then we'll be back in just a few after we jump in.
Personal stereos, music, television, TV commercials, movie soundtracks,
soundtrack to the smash film,
video games, the internet, and a $9 billion a year industry that's with us when we wake up, as we drive, study, when we exercise, as we relax, shop, go out to eat, and finally as we go to sleep. And the result is a new type of revolutionary, one even more secure in music's power to influence individuals as well as shape the culture.
So music is really great. It can move, a large group of people. It can inspire and move a large group of people. Then revolution can happen.
There's more to Rage's music than meets the ear.
We are able to seduce some people in with the music who then are exposed to a different political message.
As Bob Pittman, founder and one-time president of MTV, once bragged, the strongest appeal you can make is emotionally. If you can get their emotions going, make them forget their logic, you've got them. At MTV, we don't shoot for the 14-year-olds, we own them.
It's MTV. Today you are a woman.
MTV. It's all part of growing up.
No one wants to feel like they're being influenced, and certainly not owned or controlled by anything that's outside their own rational decision-making minds. Yeah, maybe some of those idiots who hang out in front of Game World at the mall are being led around by their nose rings, but we'd like to think, not me. The simple, inescapable truth, however, is that you and I do become, to some degree, what we listen to and watch. In the same way that human biology dictates that if you live on a steady diet of junk food, you will eventually damage your body, the entertainments you feed upon, for good or ill, will affect your emotional and spiritual well-being. It's true that not everyone will be influenced in precisely the same way or to the same degree, but like it or not, we will be influenced. Whether it's the manner in which music organizes thought patterns in the brain, or the mysterious spiritual power that has so fascinated artists like Hendrix, Morrison, Mickey Hart, and Tori Amos. Music truly does have enormous influence over its audience.
On my command, relinquish control. Give me your body. Surrender your soul. Submission is strongly suggested as the drum consumes your soul. The pounding sounds of percussion is all that you'll know.
Let's now close by examining the basic bottom line of this power over our souls and what we can do about it.
TJ. Son.
Yeah, Dad.
What are you doing?
I'm just doing some programming.
Programming what, the computer or your brain?
What's that?
I've already drawn the analogy between food and entertainment, how what we bring into our bodies and minds affects the type of people we become. Perhaps an even better analogy, though, can be found here, in, of all things, A Broken Window.
In his classic work, Thinking About Crime, renowned social scientist James Q. Wilson observed that disorder and crime are usually inextricably linked, that human behavior is profoundly affected by its environment. Broken windows, graffiti, drunkenness, and open displays of unfettered sexuality are an invitation for crime, a declaration that the environment is uncontrolled and uncontrollable, and that anyone can invade it to do whatever damage and mischief the mind suggests. Almost like clockwork, when this broken window effect is reversed and these elements are removed or suppressed within a community, crime rates plummet. An ordered and more dignified atmosphere encourages civility and moral behavior, while disorder breeds anarchy and immorality.
Hi, how you doing?
And if that's true when disorder appears as something as mundane as a broken window, how much more powerful is the catalyst for immoral behavior when the oral environment, when the music, that language of the human soul, is bent towards moral disorder and chaos?
A striking example of this broken window effect as it relates to music can be seen in this small park in Edmonton, Alberta. Several years ago, drug dealers began doing business here, and as a result, the crime rate in general began to increase. In an effort to restore a sense of order and preserve their community, local merchants paid for a sound system and began to broadcast the symphonies of Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart throughout the park. Neil DeBoer, the local chief of police, reported that the results were immediate and dramatic, with the number of crimes falling by approximately 800%.
While there's no way to fully quantify all the factors that led to this decline, the gut consensus was that the beauty, intelligence, grandeur, and order projected by the classical music was so antithetical to the discord and degeneracy associated with the drug trade that many of the dealers just stayed away.
A more recent example of the flip side to this principle can be seen in the rioting, theft, arson, and rape that took place at Woodstock 1999.
It's time to let yourself go right now, because there are no rules out there.
During the Limp Bizkit set, where the majority of the sexual assaults were reported, vocalist Fred Durst introduced a new song.
How many people here ever woke up one morning and just decided It was one of those days, and you're gonna break some Well, this is one of them days, yo.
And then sang,
It's going this way, I just might break your face tonight. Give me some break. Give me something break.
This chaos reached its crescendo the next night during the Red Hot Chili Peppers performance. While bass player Flea pranced about naked, and lead singer Anthony Kiedis urged women in the audience to do something so disturbing we can't even mention it here, an organization calling itself PAX, Latin for peace, distributed candles.
So here, why don't you just take one as a souvenir for coming by?
It was no small irony when these so-called peace candles were used to set fires that ultimately burned down a stage, 12 trailers, and brought 500 riot police onto the scene.
Oh, cool, let me slip it in your fire.
When asked by reporters about the pandemonium, concert promoter John Schur replied, "I can't give you an explanation. I guess they were kids blowing off some steam and it got out of hand." It's been well said, there are none so blind as those who refuse to see. Again, as with the young criminals we looked at earlier, we're not suggesting that the music and the atmosphere shaped by it were the sole cause of all the mayhem. The heat, high prices, and poor planning have all been trotted out as contributing factors. But to say that the moral anarchy intentionally promoted by this music was not a, if not the major factor, is to not only deny common sense and the broken window effect, it's to ignore a very basic aspect of human nature. If we stop to honestly think about it, we all know we have a bent towards doing the wrong things. Little children, for example, don't have to be taught how to be bad, how to be selfish or fight or get angry when they don't get their way. Parents have to work hard at teaching kids how to be good, how to develop the self-discipline necessary to not succumb to these very natural tendencies. And even as we grow older, again, if we're honest, we struggle. It's all too easy for us to become impatient or even angry over things as inconsequential as the flow of traffic. We're tempted to goof off at work, even though we know we'd be upset if someone did the same thing to us. We're tempted to get angry and rebel against the very people who love us the most. We struggle with sexual and emotional faithfulness, even though we know it's what we desire and expect in return. On and on it goes, confirming what the Bible clearly declares. The heart of man is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Like it or not, compared to the perfections of an infinite and infallible God, our fallen, fallible, and finite natures produce actions that even at their best are as filthy rags in His sight. Our bent towards evil is really more an addiction, one for which we ultimately need His power, His grace to fight and overcome. So what happens when we immerse ourselves into an environment that encourages us to give in to these temptations? When we listen to and watch things, for example, that glorify sex, anger, and rebellion, suddenly it's not just the fires or the rapes or the looting that took place at Woodstock that begin to make sense. It's the stuff that goes on every day and all around us. The dumbing down and coarsening of language.
Okay, well, I can say you said it 20 times already.
The increasing popularity of tattooing, body modification, and body piercing. The erosion of any and all standards of modesty. The loss of a sense of destiny, purpose, and hope. The use of alcohol and drugs.
I'm taking a hit for every one of y'all.
The celebration of rebellion, chaos, and anarchy. the assault on religion and moral absolutes, the growing fascination with death and the occult, the embrace of anger, aggression, and the celebration of violence, the increasing normalization of sexual debauchery, the list drags on. The sonic environment created by many of today's artists, both at Woodstock and, more importantly, throughout our culture, is encouraging behavior that in any other time and in any other context would be almost unthinkable.
All right, we got one rule. There are no fucking rules. Have a good time.
The prophetic warning of Galatians 6 has come true with a vengeance. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he shall also reap. For the one who sows to his flesh shall from his flesh reap corruption.
All right, so let's go ahead and break down that portion. That was pretty heavy. So if you guys are watching this and you're out there, you definitely want to put the kids to bed before you watch this show. It's kind of heavy. There's a lot of heavy topics in there. So we're not through to black, so we don't typically go this deep into things. So let's go ahead and unpack what we had just seen.
Go, Tom.
You know what? I'm watching this and I'm wondering who it's made for. I guess maybe it was made for youth group kids to warn them not to watch this, you know, and maybe for parents, you know, that were worried about their kids getting involved in the culture. I don't know. I mean, so this stuff to me is obvious. But I guess I get the idea. I'm just kind of deconstructing everything in my head right now, and this is just like bringing back, you know.
It's like if you were talking right now to a youth group right now that are tuned in to hear us do a commentary based on something that happened in the 90s. I mean, this music went up to about 98, I believe.
Yeah.
So I would say that's your target audience, is to talk to like children saying, hey, like this is a real serious thing. Music is going to actually shape and, you know, do things in your life. And it's very important that, you know, you take care of what you put in your ears, you know. I don't think it's like an anti-rock and roll or saying all music is bad, but it's saying, you know, pay attention to exactly what these messages are.
I guess it's just kind of redundant because it's showing something that's really graphic and saying, hey, this is really graphic and bad as you're looking at, you know what I'm saying?
But there's people out there, there's Christians out there though, Tom, there's Christians out there that are like, yeah, who cares? It's just music. Like there's lots. I'm actually finding out that a lot of people are pushing back even on these bands and saying, hey, what's the big deal? It's just music. And so what? What's the big deal?
Well,
so
let me ask
enough. I'm surprised myself that there's lots of Christians out there right now that are probably like, oh my goodness, like chill out, guys. It's just music.
I think it's indefensible personally, but I probably like some stuff that other people would say, hey, you know, you shouldn't be listening to that.
So Tom, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so maybe you fill us in on maybe your story, your testimony of like, you know, I'm sure you came to mainstream music first and then found your way back into the Christian metal rock scene, right? You've been on plenty of shows. You've talked about the bands you like, from DeCarmo and Kida, you know, all the things that came up through the 80s. How did you get to that point? Because in your testimony, you know, you were seeing pornography as a young child. I'm sure the music that you were listening to or being influenced by was also of the same debauchery. And so how did your story walk down?
Okay, real quick. I'm gonna try to tell this story real quick. When I was a little kid, one time my grandfather brought home a tape of a preacher preaching against like rock and roll music, and it was mostly from the 70s, early 80s, and it was all about Hotel California, Ozzy Osbourne, Led Zeppelin, backmasking, all that stuff. And I was convinced from listening to that tape over and over again that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna opt out of this stuff, okay? And that's what I did. But there's other music that I listened to. I grew up listening to just MTV, pop radio. Okay. I went to a thing called IYC in 1988. We watched another preacher talk about music and the dangers. I was a lot more mature then. And what we did, my friend and I, we were like, you know what? We're going to get rid of all of our secular music. And we did. And we started listening to Christian music. Okay. And we listened to Christian music for years and for years and for years. And we kind of made fun of the secular music, and we thought we had the best music. Okay. Fast forward years and years later, MTV comes into my home. I go through a divorce, just a combination of things. I lost a lot of convictions. And that's when I went back and listened to a lot of the music that I didn't listen to later. I'll tell you what, another thing happened was like the show The Osbournes came out. And I was like, hold on, what's going on? I thought this guy was a Satanist. I was lied to, not Satanist. This guy can't even run the remote on his TV, much less do a ritual. So, Ozzy, and I read the biography by Ozzy. He was like, Satanists would show up at our show, and we didn't want those freaks there. We were just trying to, make some cool music, and we thought this was a good subject. Not defending them, not saying that they weren't into dark stuff, okay? But that's what they said. So I got into the music a lot later in life, okay? Into the music that I didn't listen to when I was younger. And now I still love, I mostly listen to that old Christian music that Doug and I love. That's my favorite music, because I don't even like the new Christian music, I'll be honest with you. I just think it's a nightmare. I got the new Toby Mac a couple months ago. I like that. But it's just anyway, that's my story in a nutshell. We could go into a lot of other things. I've been to tons of concerts, Christian and secular.
Well, how did coming
the thing
back
about
to that?
music that I like what it said is we become emotionally connected to music. Okay. It does something. And we like the music. We like the way that the words are sung. And a lot of times we're not paying attention to what's said, and that's getting into our subconscious. Okay. And that message or that spiritual poison is having an effect on us, and we don't realize it. All right. I don't know. Looking at all that, for me, it's just kind of obvious. I don't want to come off like arrogant or anything like that. I'm not. I don't think I can't be affected by music. But to me, it's not a deal like it was, before. I just don't even think about it. I love the Lord, and I want to serve him. I want to listen to his praises. And then sometimes when I'm out somewhere, I hear a song and I'm like, yeah, hey, I remember that song. I like it. I don't have any conviction about it. You know what I'm saying? But I mostly want to listen to God's praises. But
let me ask this real quick.
I probably shouldn't. I don't recommend anybody listen to secular music. But I'm not gonna come off like I'm some kind of super saint Christian.
Yeah. Well, let me ask everybody this. So Tom included. So Tom came into this. You were listening to Christian music first, and then after you got rid of secular music, then you got into that. Then you kind of came back full circle. I would say Doug was in this boat. I was in this boat. Elijah, you were in this boat. Maybe share really quickly, because who is this documentary made for, right? It is really targeting youth group kids or believers, right? It's not targeting secular people, right? So let me ask you guys this, and maybe share your stories in a short time, because we got to get back to the film. And I know Tom's going to jump off here in a second. But let me ask you guys this. In that period, when we would have called ourselves believers, that we were completely involved in the things that we're watching, right? The things that we're seeing on here are probably artists that we all listen to, in even these songs that they're revealing and showing as believers. How did we justify that in our lives and where were our walks at, right? Did we have strong walks when we were listening to this stuff? I know there's obvious answers for some people, but for some people, how did you
Hey, I have an answer for that. I remember, okay, I can tell you a couple things. I remember I compromised. I went out and I bought a CD, Lenny Kravitz, Let Love Rule. Didn't know what was on it, but I was out at the store and I bought this CD by Lenny Kravitz. And I was shocked because there was a lot of Christian lyrics on that CD. And I thought, wow, man, I compromised, but it paid off. Okay. Not defending Lenny Kravitz or anything like that. I'm just telling you my experience. That happened a couple other times. I remember when I bought, I was listening to some hardcore music and I was like, man, I like some of these bands. I bought the band Downset and I was pleasantly surprised. I was like, wow, this, there's some, good stuff in here. And and then I bought some music. I eventually got burnt. You know what I'm saying? I compromised, and there were a couple times where I was like, hey, I felt like there was nothing, spiritually dark about this. Then I kept doing it until I got burnt. Okay. And sometimes I would borrow music from people or they would loan it to me. And, I would listen to it, things like that. So that my walk was not good. I was struggling with a lot of things. And I was being torn apart and I didn't know why. And I had no strength, spiritually speaking. And I feel like the compromise was a result, and then the music didn't help because I was listening to, strictly Christian music. And then, I had that compromise anyway.
So for me, I would say Tom and I were kind of in the same place at the same time. Both of us were going through divorces around the same time. And we both started really pursuing the mainstream music end at the same time. I remember Tom and I going to see Downset and Soulfly at the Cleveland Agora.
It's a free ticket. Thanks, Doug.
Huh?
You gave me a free ticket. Thanks, Doug.
But see, I've worked with a lot of these artists, and I honestly, sometimes I sound like I'm defending them, but what I'm obviously doing is I'm defending my own self because of what I was into. I mean, I worked with some of the most sleaziest artists in the mainstream market that were, quote, sleazy. I'll say my whole turn to the secular market was because I got burned by the Christian market. And I got burnt out because I started out to do it as a ministry, and it turned out to be one of the biggest lies I've ever been part of. So that's kind of why my attitude towards Christian music is a little bit more harder edged, because a lot of these artists weren't actually even Christians. So why listen to them when I could go and listen to Slayer or listen to Metallica, go see Limp Bizkit, go see, I worked with Dope, who they showed on this video not too long ago. I did several shows with that band and made tons of money off that band. And the reality is that I was happier doing that because those guys were as right on as anybody could be, because they didn't hide behind the cloak of Christianity to make money. And right or wrong, but my whole heart, I wasn't there anymore. I wasn't really walking with God. I pretended, and that led for a long time. So I don't defend secular music. I don't tell people. I always tell people, your convictions are not mine. So what I put in my ears, I try to research before I put it in. But sometimes I just like, we had that show about should Christians listen to secular music. I like Body Count, I like Slayer, but I don't really listen to music all that much anymore.
I just want to add, when I went through my divorce, music was my painkiller. I wasn't into drugs or anything else, and that was my painkiller. I didn't know at the time, and this was 20 years ago, I didn't have the training on how to cope with it through, God's word, through, the right ways.
I would agree on that myself. So that's my little snippet.
Yeah. What about you, Elijah?
I started playing bass when I was 16 years old. I've always loved, playing music, being in different bands. Did a lot of that in my 20s. Actually, how I started teaching myself to play bass, one of the ways was I would just put different, I'd get CDs and put them on and just sit there and just start listening to the notes, listening, to the songs and learning them on my instrument that way. A lot of them were secular bands because I was drawn to the music itself. I liked the music. And so for me in my 20s, I was drawn to a lot of mainstream music. Primarily, I would say because of the music itself, and I wasn't necessarily always listening, to the lyrics quite as quite as much as I mean, you're hearing the lyrics, but you're not just like kind of digesting them. You're more like, it's a great song, like the song, overlooking certain things that they might be saying in the songs, and then obviously as time went on, and I know that God needed me to kind of break away from a lot of the mainstream music I was listening to. And you start to go back and you start looking at these lyrics. Wow, what am I listening to here? But I feel like it's almost for me, the music itself can be almost hypnotizing to a certain degree, where you're just, it's something that appeals to you and it draws you in, and so you're kind of willing to overlook certain things, with whether it's the artist or maybe some of the lyrics in the songs or whatever the case may be, that should truly be convicting you, but you're like, yeah, but I really like this music, I really like the way that this song is, and blah blah blah. So that's kind of always been a bit of an Achilles heel for me.
How was your walk during that period?
It was difficult. Yeah, it was a challenging time for me spiritually.
I mean, because you were in a band with pretty much guys who now aren't even believers at all.
Yeah, at the time, most of them were. I mean, two of them claimed to be Christians, but all those guys now are either atheists or agnostic or whatever. So, yeah. So it was challenging. So it was, that was the thing as well, being around people that were kind of pulling you away from, Christian music and, more mainstream music and that influence there. So.
Yeah, and one of your first shows was where?
Was for Doug.
It was for Doug.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was what, 20? Almost had to have been almost 20 years ago.
It was the benefit.
Yep.
It was the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Which one?
It was David's house. Okay,
yeah, and that So there's a lot that goes in with that, but that was 2006, 2007.
Yeah, it actually required Elijah to get out of Ohio, go to Texas, and then he got his life on track. And then once he got the bad influences out.
Wait, are you blaming me, Chris?
No, you had nothing to do with it. Yeah, you had nothing to do with it. But no, I can say this just real quick on my side, and I know Tom's about to jump off, so we'll give him the last word here.
He can stay longer.
Okay. Well, it absolutely sucked. I'll tell you. When me and Liz were dating, Liz was super strong in youth group, and that was probably the first time I had been involved in like youth ministry. And we went on at our church in the next X amount of years to lead youth for like 18 years or be heavily involved. And you know, that was when we first got together, and in those times of high school, I only listened to mainstream music probably from the time I was, other than the things that I remembered as a kid and the things that I've talked about on the show plenty of times. Other than that kind of stuff, everything that I listened to in my private life was mainstream music, and it was a constant keep you in the same place, right? I never, I'm the guy who's never done alcohol, drugs. I never smoked, never had sex before marriage. I had one girlfriend, but the music was so instrumental in keeping me in the same unproductive, biblically, spiritually state from the time I was, a teenager, and and earlier that when I became a believer, to all the way until I was around 19 years old, roughly, right around that point, when I fully gave it up. And so it was that whole period where, I had really no desire to, pick up the Bible. I didn't have a desire to do this. Now, was I rooted enough to not, do those other things and know right from wrong? Physically, yes. Spiritually, I could just listen to that stuff all day. It never affected me to do those things, but spiritually, it kept me just afloat in a very unproductive state. And as I've mentioned many times, it developed my thought patterns, the things that I think of, the things I become attracted to, all of those. The music was so instrumental in that. And so it really did leave me completely scarred and wounded. And ironically, buying and selling today, all sorts of different types of music, buying pallets and doing all this stuff for a business, you run into the music that kept you in that place at one point, and the temptation to put it on is there, and then you put it on and you go, there's a zero effect, and that's only because of maybe maturity and spiritual growth. But it was, at that moment in time, I could easily justify that stuff, everything they're talking about. It was so justifiable in my walk. I wasn't doing these things, and I was different, right? I didn't maybe go down some of the paths maybe Tom did, Doug did. I didn't have botched marriages. I didn't have these issues or that issue, and it was like I was able to, keep it at bay. And boy, Elijah will know, the minute that I flipped the switch, like I didn't only listen to Christian music, and it became like everything. And then I was probably pushing it too much on him. And then I was taking him to every concert I could get him to go to, going to, things that he didn't like, so yeah.
Well, Chris, one thing I want to ask you is that with all the stuff that you listen to, how many of those artists are still Christians or are, quote, considered Christians?
Of the artists from the
but this is an irrelevant conversation. It's like hymns. For example, who cares about like the person that wrote that hymn and what they did behind the scenes? Like we have this life now that's social media. I don't think so. No, I don't think so at all, Doug, because bottom line is, I'll ask everyone on the panel this one question. What was music invented for? What was the primary purpose that music was invented for? Go. Who wants to respond?
Yeah. To glorify God.
100%. Now, personally, we might have our weaknesses. We all can have our stories. But bottom line, guys, as Christians, we all have to acknowledge the fact that music was designed for one purpose, was to bring glory to God and God alone, period. Not for selfish reasons. Hey, I like this song. Hey, this makes me happy. That's secondary. The purpose of music was designed for God's worship and glory, period. So I'm saying, as believers, we have to at least acknowledge the fact that when we're talking about, going from little pop artist to like Slayer, fine, it might be on the slippery slope, but I find it interesting, and I'm guilty of it myself. But isn't it interesting how we act like children when we get mad at God, something bad happens in our life, and the last thing we turn to is God, where it's like we're having a temper tantrum. It's like we're giving him the silent treatment. You know what? Instead, I'm going to drink poison. Because this music is spiritual poison, period. It is. Any which way you want to look at it. You can say Metallica, for example. And again, I love Metallica and I listen to them even as a Christian once in a while. Put on the song. I'm like, man, go back, remember those memories. But Metallica as a whole is spiritual filth. It's actually poison. There is no justification to say a Christian should diet on a healthy diet of Metallica, once a week at least, as long as they're doing this and that. So, I mean, there's one person piping up, and I'll say it, and I'll be strong, and I'll be that guy. But I'm just saying we all have to acknowledge the fact that music was designed for the worship of God, period. So when it comes to music, the ultimate prime thing that we should be focusing on is getting to a point where 99% of our pure joy in music is worship, period. And if we want rock and rap and hip hop and we want instrumental, fine. That's all secondary. But our prime focus should be worship, hymns, worship. It can be any type of whatever.
A great example, Robbie. Like, I mean, we could look at Kevin Max and go, when they put out some of these songs like In the Light, some of these other songs that they were doing, and you look at his life now and you're like, oh man, it has ruined all of the meaning of all of those songs. And a lot of those songs were things that, probably got a lot of people through. DC Talk was huge, right? And not just from like, hey, they're, this, but there was some real spiritual meat to some of their music. And, we can't look at where he's at now and go, all of the things that he's saying, everything that he did during that period can't be used just like a Ray Boltz or somebody like that and go, you can't get edified by listening to a Ray Boltz CD because he's come out as a full-blown homosexual. Doug may disagree with that.
God would probably have more, like at the time or whatever it was. The fact was that song brought so many more people closer to God. Even if he wasn't walking right with God, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. If it's bringing glory to God and Jesus, that's the primary purpose of music. You can't debate it. Nobody on this panel can debate this at all. Music was designed for the primary purpose of worship to God, period. Now, it can be used for good and evil. Everyone always talks about that. But I'm saying as believers, as a diet for us, do you think that they're going to be doing any, regular songs in heaven? There's no example of it. It is constant worship of God in heaven, right?
I get that, but we're not there. That's not what I'm saying. Not what that was about.
No, but it was about that. But I'm saying as Christians, that's what we should be moving towards. And again, I'm guilty of it. I'm not being judgmental at all. I liked Metallica. I loved them. As a Christian, the odd time I'm like, oh, I just got to hear, I forget what song it was. And I just sit there, I'm like, man, what a great song. Oh my goodness. Wow, it just moves me and it's amazing. But nothing else matters. Or what was the other slow one? There was like just this epic song.
Wherever I May Roam. Hey, is that true about Ray Boltz?
Yes.
Yeah, that's totally true about Ray Boltz.
Wow. Okay.
But anyways,
my point is,
but I can't be like, you know what? I'm going to start listening to more Metallica and like think that this is okay and justify it, because biblically speaking, it's going to be really hard to justify it. And again, at the worst time in our life, at the most down point of our lives, when bad, tragic things happen, it just seems, I mean, we all do it, but why in the world would we go to the worst, filthiest kind of music and not turn to God and go that direction? But it's normal. It's human nature. I get it. But I'm saying we should all acknowledge that.
If we're going to talk about music, we got to talk about all media, websites that we go to, movies that we watch, TV shows that we watch, YouTube videos that we watch, because there's so many people that are like, okay, well, I don't listen to rock and roll music, but they veg out on stupid TV for hours. Okay?
Well, that's a whole other debate, Tom, because again, we're talking about music itself. Music was designed for what purpose? Acting was not, there's no acting in the Bible. There's no like, hey, when you act, but there's no acting in the Bible where it's like when you act and you fake, you're going to fake to the glory of God. Acting is just faking. It's faking being something that you're not. That's all it is, right? Plays and all that. We could go into that as another separate show if you want to go into that. It's a fascinating debate for sure. But I'm saying music as it is, as it stands, what was it primarily designed for the believer? I'm saying that is 100% to bring glory to God. It's Satan that perverted it. Satan wants to bring focus to everything, to self, to society, to sex, to drugs, to fame, to power. He wants to bring, he does it emotionally and it's powerful.
But we would be remiss if we didn't show both sides. I mean, you have Hillsong, you have
Hillsong, I don't care. Hillsong has created some incredible worship songs. I don't care if they're way off doctrinally and they're Illuminati and they're satanic, and you can go down this road. No, but we can go down this road all the time. Everyone's satanic. Toby Mac is satanic. He's an Illuminati. So guess what? I'm going to throw all his music out. Guess what? Throw all of it out.
Yes.
No, but it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It's a poor example. When you, okay, I guess, you know what? Metallica is equal to DC Talk. Would you say that, Doug?
Yes.
You've lost it. You've absolutely lost it, Doug. Like absolutely lost it.
In the lifestyles that they live, in what most of those members believe.
Doug, you've absolutely lost it. If you're equating Metallica with a DC Talk, if you can actually say that with a straight face, and I can actually get this conversation, send it to Toby and say, listen, can you actually even talk to the guy and maybe resonate with him? It's personal for you, Doug. It's personal. You're bitter and you're taking it out on the artist. It is, Doug. Doug, it is personal. No, it is personal. How can we have a discussion? How can we have a discussion, Doug? How can we have a discussion, Doug, when it's personal? The industry, he says, the industry. What about hymns? What industry is that? When I sing a hymn, do I sit there and say, you know what? I hate that hymn. I hate the industry. I'm turning against it. You talk about the industry. Forget the industry. Talk about music. Talk about music. Does it glorify God? Does it bring focus to Jesus or not?
None of it does anymore. So no.
Well, that's fine. I guess we'll agree to disagree, Doug. But like, it's pretty sad that basically you're going to say all Christian music is equal to Marilyn Manson.
And that's where we're going to go in a future episode of the artists that are doing it right. And we're going to talk about, I told you guys I
just can't believe it. I'm blown away, Doug. It's just the most amazing thing. I think he's bitter. I honestly do. I just cannot comprehend how a believer could actually make a statement like that. Is there anybody that you would actually equate and say, well, that one person is? Like, I just like to know. But you said all Christian music is equal to like Metallica and Marilyn Manson, and like, how satanic does someone have to be, Doug? How antichrist does someone have to be where you actually basically, you know what, that guy's a little lower on my scale because, you know, he basically called Jesus XYZ, so I'll put him a little bit lower than DC Talk. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's just ridiculous, Doug. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I can't even believe it. Like, I get it if you like the music and stuff, but equating that and saying that as a Christian,
Doug, would you equate For Today is the same as Metallica?
No.
Okay, there we go. We have an example. All right. I knew there was
today. Sleeping Giant. There's a ton of bands that I would not equate.
Well, okay, sorry. That my point is that's rock and roll. I get it. No, Doug, I get it. That's more the style of music. I get it. We were talking different languages.
No.
You like hard stuff. You like rock stuff.
No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the lifestyle of those artists. You may not know
the artist is irrelevant, man. If that's the case, we'll turn against every single person that inspires us in life. Period. That's your pastor. That's the books you read. That, like, if you knew about like RC, like if you knew about Spurgeon, if you knew about all these great things, if you could get into their life and find out like they were on social media and that one slip up, you'd be like, that's it. Their whole body of work is gone. That's ridiculous, Doug.
We can take a look at King David, and who was a musician and a psalm writer, and look at the obvious sin in his life, and what did his friends say? You are that man. So I've been definitely discouraged, the more I find out about Christian musicians, because it's natural for us to look up to them.
That's our fault then. I guess that's our fault.
Sometimes I feel like there are secular artists that write better Christian songs than Christian musicians. I probably shouldn't have said that, but
fine. But you use Lenny Kravitz, Tom. But you should look into Lenny Kravitz. The guy's the new age. It's all over the place.
Yeah. I'm not defending him by any means. I mean, this was years and years ago.
I get it. Yeah, I like Lenny too.
So I'm not defending anybody, and I'm not endorsing any kind of secular music. That was just a story, but no, I agree. When it comes to that. So I've been let down and discouraged by a lot of musicians, but also encouraged by a lot of them. I wouldn't, want anybody to know, I got a lot of secrets I'm going to take to the grave personally. I don't want anybody to know, about stuff I struggle with. And especially during those days,
who in the Bible wasn't a disappointment? Who in the Bible wasn't a disappointment? I think this is the crux of the issue. Who in the Bible wasn't a disappointment? They all fell. They had absolutely horrific lives. If we went based on that,
John the Baptist's parents. There we go. I gave you an
Chris,
example.
all I'm saying is there's example after example. These guys were not doing the right thing. They weren't right in the right way.
Let's pause. The passion is amazing, guys. We're going to give Elijah, because this is what didn't happen on the last show. Elijah, you got 30 seconds, and we're going to start back the film, and then we're going to have so much more to talk about in just a few more minutes. So, Elijah, go ahead.
I want to throw a little monkey wrench in here. I was thinking about that article you had me read. It was a number of shows ago where there's these like LGBTQ Christian artists that are coming out now, right? And they want to start doing Christian music. Mm-hmm. How do you guys feel about like those type of artists coming out and writing Christian music as it relates to what we're talking about here? Like, are we still comfortable listening to those worship songs coming from
Elijah? It's a non-starter. They're Christians. They're praising God in their music, so it's a non-starter by Robbie's standards.
All I'm saying is to avoid this, all we got to do is just start listening to hymns and the classical, just praise music. We never have to worry about lifestyles. We never have to worry about these issues about, hey, I'm going to drop this artist because I found out X, Y, Z. That's idolization. That's all of our fault. We've all done it. We're all guilty of it. I've got collections of Delirious, totally inspiration. If I found out Martin Smith did something bad, he cheated on his wife, I'm not going to chuck out all of Delirious. Like, that's the mindset. That's our modern day mindset. People didn't think like that before. They didn't say, what's that person's life like? And therefore, am I going to acknowledge the body of work or their music? So I'm saying to protect ourselves, let's all listen to worship.
We're going to listen to David's hymns. And
you got to throw them out.
Yeah, because he, you know, we didn't look at his heart. We judged him by his actions of adultery and sending the husband to the front of the line to be murdered.
Each part of his life, he never, ever denied his belief in his walk with God. He was a God after man's own heart.
So let's say this. Hold on. Let's pause.
He's a murderer and he's an adulterer. I mean, can you imagine how crazy that would be if a Christian artist came out and they're like, they murdered someone and they committed adultery? We'd be all up in arms like crazy. We'd chuck out their entire catalog. You know, but again, it was printed in the Bible for a reason. He chose David for a reason. And basically to this day, people sing his song.
But Robbie, what I was actually really getting at, sorry, Chris, was that the artists that are being showcased on Hell's Bells 2 are no different than those that are showcased on a Cornerstone video or a Tooth and Nail video.
Huge difference, Doug. No, huge difference. I can't imagine like someone actually tuning into this show that's actually, maybe they're not believer, maybe they just become a Christian to hear a show like this and to be like, you know what? I guess you're all screwed because you can't listen to good Christian music because they're all crap and you can't listen to any secular music. I get it. I get that there's bad music out there, but that's up to God and them to kind of discover. But the pursuit should be for music that draws you closer to God, truly, that brings more focus to Christ and his atoning work on the cross, period. Nonstop, every day. That's what we should be listening to, more and more and more of it. I'm not saying I do it. I'm just saying that is what we should be doing. So this idea that we have to look at every single artist and break it down, we're going to have a hard time with it. You know what I mean?
Let's jump back in. We'll pick this up. So now
let's get
your thoughts together. Let's get a little bit more content, and here we go.
All right.
Billboard magazine got it exactly right when it acknowledged that popular music doesn't just reflect aspects of our society, which of course is the most common defense raised in support of the industry. It also helps define, condone, and deepen their some effect. While the vast majority of us will never be inspired by popular music to kill or commit a crime or even to take our clothes off in public, we are nevertheless affected. Whether it's in our attitude towards sex, aesthetics, authority, intelligence, civility, language, beauty, on and on. The world we create for ourselves through our choices in music, along with other entertainments, goes into our hearts and minds and works, for good or ill, their subtle magic. And this is precisely why the clear warning God presents to us in Proverbs is echoed throughout the Bible. Watch over your heart, the things you listen to, watch and think about with all diligence, for out of your heart will flow the issues of life.
I think that there are things that are spiritual about music that transcends what the words are saying. I think
Possession is the psychic phenomenon which occurs when the divinity becomes manifest. It is the point which one travels by the most visible and physical means. Yet to the traveler, it is itself invisible.
Trance is a way to merge with the cosmic beat of the universe, a way to heal, to release emotion, to awaken spirit, to taste the ecstasy of the dance.
Natural, magical patterns of percussion is the discussion, so listen up close. Let it connect you to the powers that be with the healing rhythmic synergy. Techno-tribal, a positively primal, shamanic, anarchistic, archaic revival.
And I think that's what music was originally. In ancient times, we had a different consciousness. It wasn't the kind of consciousness that we have now. When people made sounds, they could see other beings still. We only forgot to do that when we developed Western language and perspective and architecture. Our consciousness changed.
We've seen how powerful music is. Its ability to inspire, indoctrinate, organize thought patterns, produce endorphin highs, generate sonic environments, to, as Stones guitarist Keith Richards said, work in all kinds of mysterious ways. But we can never really understand the heart of this mystery, or the real bottom line of music's power, until we look at its spiritual connection.
Perhaps no living musician has had more experience with music's power to move and enthrall an audience than Oscar-winning composer John Williams. His film scores for many of our most popular movies have touched millions of lives worldwide, leading him to observe the one thing perhaps that every culture on earth shares, even before language, is music. There's a very basic human, nonverbal aspect to our need to make music and use it as part of our human expression. It doesn't have to do with articulation of a language, but with something spiritual.
Words are useless, especially sentences, leaving logic and reason to the arms of unconsciousness.
Mickey Hart echoed this idea of music being a type of proto-language, what Scottish writer and critic Thomas Carlyle called the speech of angels, when he described music as the language of God, a secret call whose intention is to vibrate the mind and body to form a union with the spirit world. It is the preferred medium for communication with the gods. This union with the spirit has been described by many of rock's greatest luminaries. The Who's Pete Townsend declared, "When I'm on stage, I feel this incredible, almost spiritual experience. When they occur, they are sacred." Pop superstar Michael Jackson has written, "On many an occasion when I'm dancing, I have felt touched by something sacred. In those moments, I felt my spirit soar and become one with everything that exists." John Anderson of Yes acknowledged, "Music has always been religious. Music is a passion and a vehicle for understanding why we are here. It's a remembering of the past and ritual." Irish bluesman Van Morrison, one of contemporary music's most brilliant and enduring performers, agrees. Music is spiritual, he declared. Singing, playing an instrument is spiritual. It's coming from a spiritual world.
I think spirituality exists mostly in art and in music, and the last place you're going to find it is in religion.
Peter Gabriel has described music as a spiritual doorway. Its power comes from the fact that it plugs directly into the soul. A sentiment foreshadowed by hippie troubadour Donovan when he declared that rock was a perfect religious vehicle. Jefferson Airplane singer Grace Slick might have been wondering where that religious vehicle was headed when she stared out at the mind-blowing, culture-defining freakout that was the first Woodstock and wondered, were we, the bands, there to invoke the spirits, the gods? Were we pagan? Were we all shamans of equal power, channeling an unknown energy, seeking fluidity?
It's the perfect place for
Paul Stanley of KISS put a slightly different spin on a very similar conclusion.
In other ways, I think of myself as kind of like a holy roller preacher. I'm testifying and I'm getting everybody riled up to the power of almighty rock and roll.
No band has had more experience and has experimented more with channeling this type of spiritual energy than the Grateful Dead. The band's name and talisman was taken from a character in folk tradition who served as a ferryman, conduit, a bridge to the spirit world, and the band provided a musical experience that offered safe passage to the other side. In 1995, guitarist Jerry Garcia made the final voyage to the other side, dying from a heart attack brought on by years of drug abuse. One fan eulogized the 53-year-old bandleader by describing just how spiritual their concerts had become. A Dead show was not just a concert, it was a place of worship. The band was the high priest, the songs, the liturgy, the dancing, the prayer, the audience, the congregation. And in those moments of perfect grateful deadness, we collectively stormed the gates of heaven, entered a sacred chamber of the universe from which we returned, always reluctantly, always transformed. In all this, bassist Phil Lesh got right to the bottom line when he said, "Every place we play is church."
I'm the one who's going to have to die when it's time for me to die.
And Jimi Hendrix agrees.
Do you think music has a meaning?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's good to be more spiritual so than anything now. Pretty soon I believe that they're going to have to rely on music to like get some kind of peace of mind or satisfaction, direction actually.
We're making our music into electric church music.
We're playing for our sound to go inside the soul of the person actually, and see if they can awaken some kind of thing in their minds.
30 years later, echoes of this same philosophy can be found everywhere. From the Lollapalooza festivals as conceived by Perry Farrell, to the all-night dance parties or raves that crop up in major cities throughout America and the world. Dr. Russell Newcomb, a sociologist who specializes in rave culture, extended Lesh's and Hendrix' religious metaphor when he wrote, "DJs are the high priests of the rave ceremony, responding to the mood of the crowd, with their mixing desks symbolizing the altar, the only direction in which the ravers consistently face. Dancing at raves may be construed as the method by which ravers worship the God of altered consciousness." The fact is, there's a certain inevitability to this type of connection. Music has always been seen as fundamentally spiritual, as something closely associated with religion and worship. Even the very word music suggests this spiritual dimension. Its etymological root, muse, is the name of the spirit beings, daughters of Zeus, who the ancient Greeks felt were responsible for the inspiration of all art. Over 3,000 years later, this connection between muses, or spirits, and music hasn't just survived, it's thrived. The world of popular music virtually teems with artists who believe they are channelers for spiritual forces, guiding lights to the undiscovered areas of our subconscious. Often these spirits are credited with helping inspire or even compose a particular song. John Lennon, for example, has stated, "When the real music comes to me, it has nothing to do with me, because I'm just a channel. It's given to me, and I transcribe it like a channel."
A lot of the songs were written in about 15 minutes to 45 minutes, just really quickly. Glenn and I in the room, very stream of consciousness, as though many times we felt as though it was being channeled through us.
And plus my songwriting too, I'm very, very aware that when I write a good song, I'm just acting as like a messenger. It comes from a higher source. You know, I'm not so egotistical that I think that I've done this all on my own. I'm very, very aware that there's a higher source sort of guiding me through this, and I'm just acting as a messenger.
Led Zeppelin's Robert Plant felt that their most popular song, Stairway to Heaven, was given in much the same way. I was holding a paper and pencil. Then all of a sudden my hand was writing out words. There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, and she's buying a stairway to heaven.
And she's buying the stairway to heaven.
I just sat there and looked at the words, and then I almost leapt out of my seat.
And it makes me wonder.
There were some very strong vibrations in that place, and we're not quite sure of what nature, you know.
We've always, within the band, said there is a fifth member, a mystical member, yeah.
The members of Black Sabbath also know exactly what Plant was talking about.
We would literally show up in a room, and it was almost as if the songs were already written.
When we first wrote this sort of music, we didn't even know what we were doing, and we went, oh God, we like this, you know, it's strange, but we like it.
Yeah, although it is a rock and roll band, there's a phenomena involved there where that stuff just comes from somewhere, and it just so happened that we happened to be the ones that it came to.
Tori Amos music is channeled more deliberately, making use at times of fairy rings, sympathetic magic, sacred geography, and psychoactive drugs. When people were asking me about the whole fairy thing, she told one interviewer, it was because I believe in the spirit side. I think music comes through dimensions. It's arrogant to think you can create music on your own. There's a co-creation going on. I don't know with whom, but there is this well that we all tap into. On other occasions, she has described the songs themselves as spiritual entities. I feel like it's really kind of nice they come and use my body to say what they want to say. It's an energy force that comes and visits me. But not only do many musicians see spiritual forces attending the process of creation and composition, the performance itself can also be suffused with supernatural energies. Carlos Santana, whose Supernatural disc was among the most popular and critically acclaimed recordings of 2000, can hardly discuss his music without bringing up its, well, supernatural characteristics.
It's a spiritual vibe. It's a spiritual hit. It's a hit, you know, it's a hit that you can't get at church.
In an interview with Guitar Player magazine, he declared, "I am the string and the supreme is the musician." It's like sometimes I'm not aware I can do some of these things on my guitar because in reality, I'm not doing them. They are being done through me. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Santana was more specific concerning the identity of this supernatural entity, identifying him as Metatron, the architect of physical life. His personal studio, a place he calls church, features candles, The word Metatron spelled out in intricately painted picture letters on the floor, and a yellow legal pad Santana uses to record the spirit's messages when they come to him like a fax machine. Then there's this striking observation by fusion guitarist extraordinaire John McLaughlin. One night we were playing, and suddenly the spirit entered into me, and I was playing, but it was no longer me playing. Porno for Pyro's guitarist Peter DiStefano echoed McLaughlin when he observed, "A lot of that guitar playing is not me. We figure we got help from something more powerful." And earlier in this video, we saw AC/DC guitarist Angus Young say almost the exact same thing. "Someone else is steering me. I'm just along for the ride. I become possessed when I'm on stage."
Of course, the real question then becomes, just who or what is steering him? Where exactly is this other side to which the Grateful Dead ferries its audience? What spirits are being channeled? And what God does the Electric Sky Church celebrate? To help answer these questions and to more fully understand the mystical relationship that exists between man and music, we must first understand some basic biblical truths concerning the fundamental nature of reality. Again, you may choose not to believe these principles, but at least try to understand them.
You're muted, Chris.
Okay, I think this is a great place to stop because I think we all know where this is about to head to. So go ahead. We're going to start breaking this down. We can start from Tom, move our way up to Robbie. Let's go ahead and break this down and then see if we can get a little bit more in tonight. And then we'll pick up another episode in the future.
Hey, yeah, Chris, thank you. And Robbie, thanks for inviting me on, guys. I love hanging out with you. By the way, just want to mention a little website called throughtheblack.com. We've been pumping out content for weeks over there. And we do a show on Friday night called Audiotopsy where we analyze a secular song. And we just kind of break down, musically and lyrically what's going on with it. But we have been taking people to school on all kinds of stuff from chaos magic to Satanism. We've been covering a lot of dark stuff, and we've really been covering ourselves in prayer. But anyway, if you don't know, throughtheblack.com, yes, that's the website, and you can find the YouTube channel there. In that segment that we just saw, we saw a lot of stuff, okay? Obviously, when this was designed for youth group kids, we know, hey, this is demonic stuff. Who are the spirits? Who are they channeling? We heard them talking about what's called automatic writing there, which is an occult practice, okay? We heard Angus Young talking about being possessed on stage, and the inspiration for the music we understand is demonic. Now, let me jump in here and say where I think inspiration for music comes from, okay? And I'll be interested to see what how everybody feels about this. I feel like it comes from three places, okay? It comes from God. God can inspire a believer through his word or just, through, life, answered prayer, whatever, through worship. God can inspire somebody to write a song or poem or a book or something. And then it can come from the dark side where if somebody is not a Christian, they're open to demonic influence. And, and especially if they're into the occult, they're even more open to the demonic influence. And they can write a song that's occultic, that's very ritualistic, that's praising Satan, whatever. And then I think there's an area where I, as a human, can write a song that could be about anything. It could be a story song. It could be, just something about some kind of a human event, okay? There's tons of examples of story songs. A lot of songs are, poems set to music, stories set to music, okay? So I think music comes from three different places. I realize I'm not interviewing anybody here, but we saw in that segment a lot of, these guys' own words, they're saying, yes, they're not saying demonic, but hey, there's a spirit out there. Carlos Santana, he gave the name Metatron. Well, I would like to see what he really thinks of Metatron if we were to be able to pull back the veil, and show him this grotesque demon that he thinks is a deity and inspiring him.
Yeah, let's just go up the line.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. I think that that's, as far as where inspiration for music can come from, and I think, we saw with the video, there's a lot of these artists are claiming that they're getting their inspiration, their power, their ability to play instruments from another source. And obviously, if you open yourself up and allow those doors to be open to that realm, to that world, they're going to come in and they're going to take advantage of that. And I think that it's interesting. Sometimes you see some of these huge songs and these big hits that you've seen over the years. And then you look at some of the artists and where they claim they've gotten their influence from and all of that, spiritually and such. And, it makes you wonder, if they're able to, draw from that demonic power or whatever, that, some of these songs, how do some of these songs that, there are some great songs out there that have been these, at the top of the charts, but then sometimes you hear some of these songs, you're like, how in the world is this a great song? Why does everybody like this song? And you wonder if there's, because of demonic influence, that there's almost like a hypnotic thing to it that people just attach to it, because of that dark power behind it. So I don't know. It's just a thought.
Hold on, Doug. Before we get into Doug and Robbie. Okay, guys.
We got nothing to debate here. It's just we're just commenting.
All right, it's on.
Oh, stop it.
Ding, 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 ding.
I would say that I'm in agree. I mean, we all should be in agreement with the three versions of that Tom brought up.
So, but before you say that, Doug, so go back to the previous discussion, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if a Christian artist is capable of being influenced by all three of those, right? I think that's possible, right? That begs to say, hey, maybe Doug has a point, Robbie, right? Would you say, Robbie, would you say, hey, Doug has a point here, that maybe if that is the case, could a supposedly Christian artist be influenced by Satan to create deceptive music that ultimately causes the same harm as secular music? So you guys go ahead.
Chris can jump in at any point as well. I don't think there's like a debate. Again, where I stand on it. I mean, I understand what Tom is saying. With the inspirations, I totally agree with that, but it doesn't negate the fact that really there's two worlds. There's two spiritual worlds. There's like of the kingdom and not. And again, one's secular, one's Christian, period. Like we have to acknowledge that at least. Now, is there benign music? Is classical okay? Is a love song, but for a married couple okay? Fine. But what all of a sudden if that love song, a bunch of teenagers start listening to that love song and they start talking about having sex with each other? Like what I'm saying is that influence, is it kind of protected or is it just open-ended? So I'm not saying a love song can't be good in the right context, but having it, a bunch of teenagers listening to that love song and the same thing, again, will that inspire them to start wanting to have sex before marriage? We all would agree, hopefully, on the panel that having sex before marriage is wrong or it's a sin. Biblically speaking, God frowns upon it, right? So if there's music that's encouraging that, it's probably not the best thing to do if you're already struggling in temptation with it. Now, can a Christian at a point in their walk and they're walking strong with God, listen to occasional secular music? I'm saying that's fine. We're talking overall, not personally. We should be talking to an audience and saying, look, man, as whatever you want to call us, you know, if we're going to come in and we're going to do commentary on this, we should be telling people that there is a lot of danger, dude. You're playing with fire. It's like a 6-year-old getting the keys to a Lamborghini. They're going to crash that car. It's too powerful for them. This stuff is incredibly powerful. Music, as the documentary will say, and as a musicologist, talk about the immense, insane power of music, to the tune, the fact that people and companies pay millions and millions of dollars to put music into advertisements to sell their products. It works. It clearly does change behavior. It does what it does. Now, when it comes into the spiritual ramifications of the agenda and what they're trying to accomplish in the world, I think it's clear to see that a lot of these bands in here, when these kids were at the concerts, they're now governors. They're now in politics. They're now in the schools. They're now this stuff permeates. Everyone's like, oh, everyone's blowing off steam, having a good time. Where are they now? They're the school teachers. They're in the LGBT. They're everywhere. This is what is breeding. And it doesn't seem like it's slowing down. And the culture meshes with music. And I just think it's very dangerous, especially if we're talking to young people and saying, look, man, this is going to have a profound effect on your life. And God wants you sheltered from this stuff. So why in the world would you just listen to benign music if you could be listening to music that is going to draw you closer to God? Now, if you're listening to music and that does it for you, and you can honestly say in your heart, it does it for you, I have no problem with that at all. If you're like, yeah, you know what? I really meditate on this. I draw close to God, listen to this song. Hey, that's all good. But if those lyrics are anti-biblical, they're the polar opposite. They're basically preaching everything that basically crucified Christ. You can go down to any single band and you can find some serious issues with it. And I've run through this, a long time. I'm guilty of it myself. So I'm not like preaching, saying, hey, I don't do any of this stuff. I've done it and I've seen the dangers. Like, for example, YouTube. I got sucked into U2 for a while. They're a great Christian band and stuff. And I mean, he's with Klaus Schwab with the World Economic Forum on stage. As truthers, how could we support, the music if they're that completely, they want to, take over the world in such a satanic way? So
Robbie,
I digress.
Robbie, I know 3 people right now that I can think of that music, secular music, had such a grip on their life and on their heart that I watched it happen, and I warned a couple of them, okay, about the music and the dangers of the music that they were listening to. Okay, I had a very friendly conversation and I said, hey, I realize you like this music and yeah, it sounds kind of cool or whatever. I said, but this can have an effect on your life. All 3 of those guys, 2 of them are in such a mess that they're unrecognizable, honestly. And the other one is just, it's unbelievable. They consider, I saw one of them, singing songs on the stage in the church. Okay. Others, they call themselves strong Christians and serve the Lord, doing work for him. And because they were unwilling, because rock and roll took such a precedent in their life and they regarded it, almost pretty much worshiped it, it was their downfall. So I agree with everything that you're saying, and I try to warn people that there is, this music is poison. It's dangerous. You have to be very careful. Even I think in this original series they talk about it. Like candy. If you put poison up on the table, in powder form, nobody's going to touch it. Okay, yeah. But if you put it in candy form, kids are going to eat it, and that's what's happening. Obviously, now again, I don't see how the new music is attractive to people, but that's just a sign of the times, right? So I agree. I think
a lot of us aren't even up on the new music lyrically or biblically.
A lot of music.
Yeah, a lot of us aren't even up on the new music to understand. I mean, Chris might be the most up to date on like musical content, spiritual content. I can't imagine, we'll have to do some stuff on that at some point. But we're talking about, the classics and, growing up and remembering these songs. And a lot for us is reminiscing. It's more like, I remember that memory. I had a fond memory, or there was a time that gave me some comfort. And I get that. I totally understand that. But my point is, and what you're saying is right. There's a lot of danger. Now, I don't know how many kids are going to have addictive personalities versus other ones that won't, and what music, some music won't affect them, some will. But overall, what music would God want his son or daughter to be listening to? What would make him the most proud? What would make him the happiest? And if we're going to please the Father and we're going to basically do that, we should be doing things to make him happy, not us, right? So that's the thing I always struggle with is it's like, are we doing things for selfish reasons because I like it? Or am I doing things because my Father loves that I do that for him? So I like to get out of that thing and this idea where we're looking at all these bands and personalities and speakers and who's their life. When we do that, it blurs the line. I think it's just fair to say if that song is bringing glory to God or it's not. If it's a biblical worldview that's helping us in this crazy world we live in, I mean, it's getting crazier and crazier by the day. If anything, we plugged into so much garbage, you want a little bit of refreshment in there. You know, if someone's reading the Bible like 2 hours a day and they can honestly say that, maybe they don't have to listen to much Christian music. But I've always told people, I say, listen, if you're not really reading a lot and in prayer a lot, this just in there, it's almost like a beautiful thing, because while you're doing stuff and having fun and working out, you know what? You are meditating. You are getting God's word in there. And again, not getting into artists and what they were like, what they wrote. But if it's just some artist that's doing Bible verses and that's all you're listening to, say while you're falling asleep, to me, it will have a profound effect on your spiritual life if you take that spiritual health, important. Johnny just joined. This will be good. He'll have a good say on this. I don't know if he's been listening. I think you're muted.
What's up? What's up, Johnny?
What's going on, guys?
So yeah, I totally agree, Tom. And again, I'm not saying that like nobody can do it. I'm saying that if we are responsible for like 1,000 youth that are all listening and they're just growing up in this world, they don't understand maybe Aussie and stuff, but we're just saying in general, secular music or Christian music, not the artist. Like we're not getting into like, oh, should we pick and choose? Let's just say start listening to worship songs versus that. Like it takes a while to get out of that grain of thought where all of a sudden it's like, oh, the worldly music is so cool. Church music, that's so, I grew up on all this music. I got saved at 21. I mean, I was blown away when I found out there was all this Christian music, and there's so many different things that helped me in my walk. And I'll tell you the last thing, and I'll leave it at this. Hell's Bells 2, I watched over maybe 50 to 60 times. I would say 40 times were with people that weren't Christian. It had profound effects. It had me being kicked out of homes. It had all sorts of things happening. But what I'm saying is not one of the people that went away didn't plant a seed. And I'm saying as ministry, we should be looking at it and saying, look, regardless of our opinions, if God can communicate through a documentary like this or through Christian music, he can plant a seed. That is so much more powerful than anything we'll ever say. So I'll leave it at that.
I think it's a useful tool. I feel like it's a little bit dated, but I think it's a useful tool. And when the word of God goes out, it does not return void. What's good for somebody else may not be good for another person, but definitely had its place.
Yeah.
Very well researched, very well done.
Well, I mean, Johnny can probably speak on this because he gets all the emails and he gets all, the testimonies. But I'm saying as someone that is in Christian radio that does, and again, we all have our opinions on, Christian radio, but as a ministry, or what the power and how it's changed people, maybe you can comment a little bit on that, Johnny.
What's the question? Sorry, I'm halfway through.
Well, we're just basically, Chris, maybe you want to just sum up just that part of it so he can speak on the fact of what Christian music, music in general, what it does. Because he gets emails every day.
Say that again, Remy.
I'm just saying he wants to know what the question is. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, we're talking about the power of music, but you're saying like, you're getting a lot of people like, is music powerful? Does it spiritually help them in their life, Johnny? Period. Does music help people grow closer to God? Would you say?
Yeah, I think it 100% does. And music is a part of our daily living. And I mean, there's a reason why, if you look at, and I mean, granted, we're not talking Christian or non-Christian, but there's a reason why commercials have jingles and stuff, because it resonates with people with what they hear. And there's a reason why that there are specific sounds and stuff. After the episode last week, I was diving into more, and I know that Chris was talking about it too, of that different sounds and the way that different ways that we hear the waves and frequencies and stuff as well. So no, it definitely is a huge impact in our lives. And what did they say? Garbage in, garbage out kind of thing.
Yeah. And I know Doug had something that he wanted to share, but he went off the screen.
As soon as I showed up, Doug was like, "I'm out."
Yeah, there he goes. Okay, go ahead, Doug. You were gonna bring something.
Well, a lot of this video, I have to say, one of the most common themes that they have is that you have to look at two of the biggest people that were involved with most of these artists, Jimmy Iovine and Clive Davis. Those are two important names. If you don't know who they are, look them up, research them, and see how evil those two guys are. Most of the artists that Hell's Bells 2 and even Hell's Bells 1 talks about had one or both of those two that were major players in all those artists with writing and producing and marketing. As far as where I'm at, I mean, Hell's Bells to me is a good documentary, but I wish they would pursue it in a way that was showing both ends of the spectrum, secular versus Christian. And you would, so I come at this in a different realm than say Robbie, than Johnny, and even probably Tom for the most part. Where I look at it, where I find things more dangerous is with the Christian music and the Christian end of those who have used the market to just either get rich, get famous, get a secular deal. And I would say that is more dangerous, because the devil you know is less dangerous than the devil you don't know. And I would say that you know what you're getting with Marilyn Manson. You know what you're getting with Slayer, but did you know what you were getting with an MXPX? Did you know what you were getting with Peter Cetera being on an Amy Grant song?
To be fair, MXPX, I wouldn't even call them really Christian band. I mean, they're lyrically,
they were huge.
Lyrically, Doug. Lyrically, I'm just saying lyrically. If all of a sudden you're listening to a whole album, they're like, they're Christians, but there's not one song about God, I'm like, that doesn't count to me.
But you have a whole generation of kids that grew up on that music.
I get it.
Now hardly even can say the name of Jesus. Or
I get it. I always had contentions with it. Well, I always had contentions in Christian music about it. I'm like, Tooth and Nail's a joke. I mean, it's an absolute bloody joke. I have Tooth and Nail albums. I fell for it. But I'm saying overall, biblically or lyrically, it's an absolute joke to say, oh, the Christian artist, and here's our label. And it's like, I can't tell at all a difference. If you can't tell even a difference lyrically speaking based on the world and the kingdom, you got issues, in my opinion. Don't label them Christian. I agree with you there, Doug. 100%. I agree with you 100%.
But you even have darker people in the quote gospel market. You have, so it's, to me, it's, I have a hard time watching Hell's Bells when I know, and I've seen some of these people, from going to GMA, from being involved at Cornerstone, doing my own shows. So
I get it.
I just.
But what I'm saying, let's say I'll bring DC Talk. Maybe that's a hot one for you. Maybe I'll pick another one. Chris Tomlin. Chris Tomlin comes out with a worship song, and all of a sudden I go to church and we're all singing this worship song. The whole congregation is singing this, and at the bottom it says Chris Tomlin. Okay, he's the one that wrote it. It is a worship song. The entire church, thousands of churches are singing it. But Chris Tomlin, by the way, whoa, he was caught having adultery. Or I wouldn't even say that, because he would just be pulled at that point. Let's just say we found out he's got a problem with porn at home. Like someone that knows someone that knows someone. Am I going to sit there and go, I can't sing this song because I know that he sang it? This is a worship song. I have to that's my point, Doug, is all I'm saying is I don't attach that person to that song. I look at that song for what it is and say, that's a worship song. So all I'm going to use examples for you, Doug, are just worship songs in church. But
I'm going to say, you don't find that dangerous?
No, not at all. I don't think so at all.
For me personally, on some of that stuff, I struggle with. For example, like the Bethel stuff. They put out some amazing music, but I'm like, dude, their theology is so bad. I want to boycott it,
But what God are they singing to? What Jesus?
No one's saying that you have to listen to Bethel. Find a worship band that you really like, that are sound, doctrinally, they're up your alley. They agree with you 110%. And there you go. There's your band for life. God's like, I got you. Here's a great band. Doctrinally, it lines up. These guys are awesome. There you go. There's your band for life. My point is, we make all these excuses, all of us included, where we make these excuses all the time. Yeah, but Hillsong. Don't listen to Hillsong. Do you think that they're the only ones that write worship music? When I listen to worship music, I say to myself, I'll get to these times and I'll be like, how come I don't listen to it more? Why am I even listening to hip hop? And I'll go and I'll listen to hip hop, I'll listen to rock or EDM. But I'm like, when I really get into worship, this is me personally, and it's personal for each person. And all I'm saying is, when it comes down to, should we be advocating for music that is very inspiring, Christian, biblical? You can learn. I mean, hip hop, Christian hip hop. When I got saved at 21, I started listening to Christian hip hop. I learned more about the Bible probably in one album than I did my entire life growing up and going to church. We were a religious family, but we weren't Christian. We went to church on Sundays. But I learned more on one album of them rapping in my ear. I'm like, whoa, man, I didn't know any of that stuff was in the Bible. Like, it was huge in my life. And Tom said, and others said, maybe music's not that big a deal. It's overplayed. It was a big deal back then. I agree. Some of it has lost its luster for sure. But the discussion is more about music in itself. As Christians, what should we be advocating for other people, not for our own life? Like, that's what I'm saying, is we always come back into like, well, me personally, and it's like, if we're going to advocate, sure, we can all warn and say, hey, man, be careful, Hillsong, be careful. But here's a great hymn, or here's a great worship song. Say it's a hymn just completely sung by some artist that you love. And again, I could use like anyone, So it could be rock, it could be EDM. I would say that is still a lot more spiritually beneficial for your life with God. And God is well more pleased with you listening to an album all about him versus an album about love and about life. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying he's way more pleased with that if that's what you're choosing to do for him.
It's such a personal thing, though, because what you may listen to with Bethel and struggle with because of theology, there are other people who are coming to know the Lord because of a Bethel song.
I agree with that. Yeah.
And so it's so tough, because we'll hear from people saying things like that, like, oh, have you dove into what Hillsong's about? I'm like, you know what? I really haven't. This is the number one song right now, and that's the reason why we're playing it. And hopefully you find some spiritual, hopefully God speaks to you through this song. And if not, there are, as Robbie said, 1,000 other worship songs out there, and 1,000 other worship churches that are doing amazing things. Elijah's, one of those individuals who's on a worship team, and you know what I mean? It's so difficult, because what I find okay in Hillsong, you'll have an issue with, but what you'll find okay with Red Rock City Church, I'm going to have. So it's such a personal thing. And the same thing goes with what Doug is saying with, punk bands, or Robbie saying with something else, is that, what Robbie says, this is his own personal conviction. And Doug says, you know what, I'll pray for you with that one. This is what my thing is. We're not going to meet each other. We got to find a way to meet each other in the middle and realize that we're all going to be in different walks and different thoughts, period.
You do realize what happened the last time you tried to bring Christians together on unity. You do remember, yeah. Right, Johnny? It didn't end well.
Face, man.
What's that?
It blew up in my face.
Yeah, that was funny. No, and that's cool. Like, we're all Christian brothers and stuff, and it's all good. Like Johnny will know. I mean, I never like lord this over anyone. I say this is personal for me. But if you want to ask me my opinion on it, I'll get very passionate on it. But I got no hate. I got nothing but love. Everyone's on their journey. So that's why Johnny brought up a good point with Hillsong and Bethel. Even Joel Osteen, for goodness sakes, of all things. All I'm saying, it might be part of someone's journey. I got into some crazy, loopy, crazy stuff when I first got saved. God had a plan. It was all part of the process, but I'll guarantee it turned out afterwards. I'm also looking at it, and I'm doing watching things, exposing the people that were part of my foundation. God still used them. I don't look at it like all that stuff, or it doesn't discount that I wasn't Christian or I was walking with God, but I was following some really wacky tobacco type guys. And all I'm saying, it was part of my process. Everyone's on their journey, and whatever, we can encourage people to say, hey, if you listen to that music and it seriously brings you closer to God, you're praying more, you're in the Bible more, you're wanting to go in fellowship more. Hey man, I'm not going to knock it at all. You could sit there and say it's Metallica, and I would still say, hey man, that's not for me. I think it's kind of crazy, but you know what? That is doing that in your life. I don't know. God's got a plan. I've heard people be saved through a Ouija board. Believe it or not. I think Ouija boards are evil. They're bad. I warn against them all the time, but God has intervened even in the occult to wake people up, and me included. I've literally been intervened. I was involved in the occult. So I'm saying God's powerful enough. It's not saying that they're okay to play with, but what I'm saying is God can still communicate even through the wickedest, horrible stuff. A person like Marilyn Manson could become born again like that. God can save anyone.
But the
say
problem
show would
is,
be
though,
pretty boring. Sorry, Johnny. I'd say the show would be pretty boring if we all agreed with each other.
Oh yeah, it's fun. It's totally fun. Chris loves it. He's just like, oh, the next debate's coming up. Ding ding. He brought a bell into it, for goodness sakes, Doug. He's brought a bell into it.
But the problem is that I'm talking for a second. No, the problem is, though, Robbie, is that you're so passionate, though, and then people are going to think that they're wrong because of it.
No,
And
but like
no. But there's so much judgment nowadays that I bring up Hillsong, and with a bunch of people, you can't. Why listen to Hillsong? You know what their theology is about? There's 100% judgment as to what you're listening to, and each and every Christian group is going to judge you for it as well.
Sure.
And if you say it's not happening, it's 100% happening, because we get messages every day about why are you doing this? Me and our church group got together and we went through all the theology, and you should not be playing this band.
So Johnny, I'm going to say this about, I have my thoughts and my dislikes about Hillsong, right? But when my daughter was on her deathbed, her favorite thing to listen to was Hillsong United. And we just let the one album just go and go and go. And the night before she died, she was in a coma. And two of our friends walked in to my parents' house, right? And they got knocked over pretty much in the spirit. They said, there is the Holy Spirit's in this place right now. And you could feel it. And I'm not going to say that God can't work through Hillsong. I've seen it. I've seen God work through a lot of different things. I'm just saying, if we're going to show the side of secular, it needs to be equal. There's equal fitting for both to be shown, the ugly sides of both sides of the coin. That's just what I'm saying. I'm not saying you can't like DC Talk. I don't like DC Talk, and I never really have. But mine is partial because I have had an experience with Toby Mac. So but I just think the show would be really absolutely boring if we all just agreed with each other.
I personally just thought we would go deeper on issues, what we're seeing today in this world, how this is in the 90s, what are we seeing in the 2020s? I guess my original thing wasn't we were going to be getting into debates about Christian music versus secular. Like, we're watching a Christian documentary, with secular words in it, basically. But I didn't think it was going to be like, okay, guys, now let's hit the flip side. Why are we going to justify secular music? I just didn't think that was the premise of going through this, Doug. In all honesty, no offense. I was just surprised. I'm like, oh, we're going this round. I just
think it's a normal thing to be able to look at and say, oh,
well, then it's not fair, Doug. It's not fair that we basically have a portion of the show devoted to a documentary that basically you need to find a Christian documentary or somebody out there that basically has done a lot of study on it, and we need equal time. If this is going to be a debate show, I have no problem with that, but we need to we're watching a Christian biased documentary, even though I think it is one of the most fair one, because all it is nonstop their own words. The artists, their own words, Metallica's words, So, but if we're going to do that, we need to find a documentary saying, hey, this is a Christian documentary, and this is why secular music is great for Christians. Then I'm fine with it, and then we can all debate it. But
hey, guys, we hit the 12 o'clock mark. So what we're going to do is we're going to let everybody. We're going to start with Elijah, work our way backwards. Let's give a quick closing to tonight's show. And Robbie definitely was involved in the occult. So if you guys don't understand this, and when I'm finished showing this, Elijah, you go ahead and get started. But if you guys did not know, this was
every time, Chris, every time, man, every time.
If you guys did not know, this is his Illuminati card. And this is Robbie Davidson.
Confirmed, everyone, confirmed.
Deep state agent. So
Johnny used to tease me, and he was going to get a T-shirt with it on. And I'm like, dude, I was not in a good mood at that point. I'm like, dude, don't even start, man. I'm getting a T-shirt. I'm gonna walk around with it, and I was not in a good place at that point.
Send that to me so I can make T-shirts.
I got hit with it. It's funny now. I can laugh about it, but you have no idea how crazy. I had a pastor put that up in the middle of his sermon, presentation on the PowerPoint. He put the Illuminati card on. He's like, I'm not saying he is, but maybe he is. I don't know. All I'm saying is it got to a point at that level where that thing was put on a church bulletin on a PowerPoint. So yeah, it was, I can laugh about it now.
Elijah.
Just a quick summary of my thoughts from what we saw tonight. they talked a lot about the spirituality behind the music. And like we said, as far as the influence of music, it's either coming from God, it's coming from the devil, or it's, maybe something more just coming from a personal level. But nonetheless, I think, after watching something like that, it's great, especially for a Christian, to sit here like myself, and it reminds me of just the power that's behind the music, and the importance of filling my mind and my heart with good spiritual godly music that's giving glory to God, and not drawing it away from him or towards myself or towards something else.
My youngest son is 15 years old. 5 years ago, his favorite artist was Toby Mac. I took him to the Christian conference, or to the festivals. Okay. I grew up going to Cornerstone in my 20s. They don't have that anymore. So we had to make do with what they had, Creation Alive Fest. And I'm trying to expose him to Christian music. And he finds Toby Mac. He finds this artist called NF and some other ones. And he kind of outgrew them, and there's no music scene today like there was in the 90s. So he is exploring music right now. And I am there by his side when he's listening to secular music, and I'm warning him of the dangers. We're talking pretty much about everything. It's kind of weird. His favorite music now, what he's been listening to for over a month, is Hank Williams, the original Hank Williams. I can't explain it. Now, again, my son he's a missionary. He's following the footsteps of his older sister doing pro-life stuff. But I have handled this differently with him than I did with my older son. I have a CD here, matter of fact. Where's it at? This was the music my older son was listening to. And I was very sensitive to dark spiritual stuff. I confiscated it. Here it is.
Oh, wow.
I took it from him years ago. I was like, no, you're not going to listen to this. This is spiritually dangerous. I feel like, because here's the thing. My son didn't care about the content. And was it spiritually dangerous? Yes. But I kind of feel in hindsight that it was a little bit worse to react the way that I did, and take this from him, because it might have pushed my older son towards that. So in regards to secular music, I have had conversations with my 15-year-old son. Pay attention to each song. Some bands can have really good songs and really bad songs on the same album. I'm trying to teach him how to do what we call presuppositional analysis, analyze it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And look at the lyrics. We can find out what their worldview is. So there's a lot to be said about this, but that's just kind of a personal thing that I think it's, all of this is very important. And I enjoyed tonight's show. It's a lot lighter than what I've been talking about on my regular show. So it feels.
If you don't mind me asking, Tom, what about your daughter? What about your daughter with music? Was it an issue? Was music at all like an issue with your daughter?
You know what? My daughter, she loved Taylor Swift. Okay. Yeah. That was her artist. She used to watch the Miley Cyrus show, the Hannah Montana, and she loved Taylor Swift. So I didn't know anything about Taylor Swift. So I took the CDs and I listened to them in one day at work. And I told her, I said, I don't find anything objectionable in this, and I said, I think, this is safe to listen to. And her and I, she actually turned me on to Taylor Swift, and I listened to Taylor Swift with her. Her and I watched Taylor Swift, and we pretty much predicted that she was going to, go where she is years ago. Now, my daughter had an emotional connection with Taylor Swift, but she pretty much said, okay, you went into this area, this is a deal breaker. Okay. And I think that's a good example of what we need to do. She loved the old music, but she's like,
Gotcha.
okay, you crossed a line here. I'm not going with you anymore.
Oh.
That's hard to do for a lot of people.
It
People
is.
can't do that. You have to be a strong Christian to do that.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
and I'm not recommending anybody listen to Taylor Swift, old
No,
or
again,
new,
I was just curious on
whatever.
her journey, but that's cool that you shared it. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thanks. Thank you.
First off, thank you for letting me come on late. I appreciate you guys as always. I was actually in my garage listening to some music, and speaking of music, bornagainsound.com is where you can get your music. I just wanted to make sure I threw that out there so far this evening. I did miss a lot of this, but I can't wait to go back and watch it. Thank goodness we have those opportunities. And I do love to hear the different perspectives, because it allows me to look at myself and see maybe there's places that I need to learn and places that I need to grow. And that's a good thing about a documentary, whether it's one-sided or not. It's like, you know what, I always call it just like going to church. Sometimes there's a lot of things that you've heard over and over and over again, but you always try to find the nuggets. So when watching a documentary, regardless if it's from one perspective or not, try to find the nuggets, try to find the things in which, like, yeah, okay, I can see where that is. And maybe there's an opportunity for you to grow or learn from those nuggets.
So I'd have to say that one of the things that I'm kind of glad that I didn't watch this part tonight or yesterday when I was going to do it of Hell's Bells 2 because I wanted to be surprised. A lot of it, I agree with a lot of the things that you guys are saying. I might come off, yelling and screaming about stuff, but I'm in agreement with Robbie. Most of the stuff that I listen to nowadays, I either listen to podcasts of like Ryan Reese and the guys from the Whosoevers, or Mark Driscoll. But one of the albums that I listen to on my way to work every day, it's the new quote hardcore heavy metal worship album. It's by a group called Holy Name. Can't really do that justice, but it's made up of Tommy Green from Sleeping Giant, and it's honestly one of the most worshipful albums I've ever listened to in my life. So I would suggest that if you're listening to like hardcore heavy metal music, it might be something you want to look into. But I'm in agreement with Robbie. Anything that gets you closer to God and ushers in actual true worship, that's the most important part of our lives. So I come off defensive partially because I've worked with a lot of these people and I know a lot of these people in these videos. And I spent the majority of my mid-20s to early 30s working in the secular music industry after I kind of walked away from the Christian industry. And I have fond memories and fond working relationships with a lot of these people. So maybe I'm biased. I don't know. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the 19 hours that we have to go through Hell's Bells 2.
Again, it's getting into just kind of the foundations right now, but it really starts moving into like, artists and all sorts of stuff. But in closing, I would just say, like, when it comes to this topic, don't mistake, my passion for anger or judgment. It's not that at all. I'm just super passionate. I love having the discussions when like there's counterpoints and we can all learn and we can sharpen together. I think it's powerful and going through this and understanding that, we do live in a spiritual world. The big focus, I think, for this, even though this is done in the 90s and we see a lot of this music and the floodgates were open, our world now is to a point now when we see the culture on how mainstream some of the most insane ideologies. And I'll say, like Madonna said this, I think it's in the documentary, but she said, if you keep seeing something over and over and over again, it won't be so shocking to you. And that's, desensitization. And I think over time, at first it's like shock. And then afterwards it's like, it's no big deal. But the question is, why is it no big deal? Because we've been conditioned for so long to be like, hey, relax. Should we be relaxing so much when it comes to our spiritual, livelihood, when it comes to our spiritual health, our walk with God? So again, to echo Doug, again, I I totally agree with what you're saying. And also, when it comes to whatever you have plugged into your life that is helping you with your walk from God, who am I to judge? I can have my difference of opinions. We can have our discussions, but again, we have to learn to live in a world where, as Christians, we're not listening to the world when it's like, if you're disagreeing with me, you hate me. No, like, you can disagree and still love each other. And this whole idea seeped in where we never want to like upset someone. We never want to like, no, you're wrong, I believe you're wrong, and have that good debate. We've lost that, where everyone's all on edge and it's like, we can't talk. Let's be passionate. Let's be talk, because at the end of the day, we can all, we're all friends, we're brothers. And it's beautiful. People benefit from that because they see all these diversing ideas coming together. Like, you know what? These guys are there, every couple of weeks, and they're laughing and having a good time. But man, they were really heated. Or Doug and Robbie, as Chris says. But Chris has got a couple of like fires in him yet. We're going to hear it. We're going to hear it. It's coming up. So in conclusion, get ready for this series. It's going to get really good. We're going to have a lot of great discussions. And I think all of us, including, we're all going to learn some amazing things.
Yeah. This documentary, much like They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll, you'd have to be blind to not see that there was a spiritual connection. There's a spiritual connection to everything in this world, and music is so different. I always tell people music is way different. Tom was making a point earlier. Movies. Those types of things, the things that we watch and look at, as we absolutely need to be looking at that stuff. There's a vast difference between the music and those things, right there. Other than the few times that things come up, like girls get super heavily involved in the Twilight series or something. Where there's a niche thing, but music is, like I've always said, it's the theme song to people's lives. It is why they dress a certain way, why they act a certain way. I guarantee you, if I was asked Tom why he looks a certain way, it is because of the music that inspired him. Doug, the same way. The things that he wears, the clothing styles that he picks, is all centered around the things that become the theme songs to people's lives, right? And it's why I used to carry around a water bottle that had all the music stickers on it, because they were the things that they just make you who you are. And somehow music has that ability. So music is such a powerful tool, and that's why in this last portion we saw, they're not even writing the things that they're writing. They're not even playing the chords that they think they're capable of, like Santana was even saying. It's because there is that spiritual realm. There is that whole thing, and what Tom mentioned, right? It either comes from these three places, but I would say in that third place, right, if we say it's just of people, it's still going to be influenced by one of the two of those other things. And even when we start off with that, they start off with that best intention to just make good quality music without having a spiritual lens, and it's wholesome and it's good. It's always going to have that influence behind it of what it is. And that's why you see even all the artists who have walked down a path of who claim faith, right? And we know them all, right? You can go back and look at Dolly Parton, grew up in the church, started steering away from her foundations of faith while, still claiming them and still holding them, where music that she was making wasn't glorifying God, and her lifestyle wasn't glorifying God, to its fullest. I'm not saying she was bad off, you know what I'm saying? So that's really kind of the thing about music. It is this amazing tool, this amazing gift that God has created, that Satan has hijacked, because he knows that it sends you down this path. Why David danced and why they played music, all these things scripturally, where it was at all throughout the Bible, is because it became the theme songs to people's lives and their walk and their journeys and their paths. And why we march to these old hymn songs, right? Into they did into battle, or old spiritual songs that were sung by the slaves, right? That got them through these times and these moments. That is the gift and the power of music. And so there is so much great responsibility within this. As the heads of our homes, we need to be guarding what we're watching, and really listening to, because those things really transform us and change us. And I will tell you this: it is so difficult to walk down a path of if we're dealing with a secret sin or sin in our lives. If we're listening to music, right? Maybe we're not opening the word. Maybe we're just turning a cold shoulder to that. We get into our car and we put on something that is uplifting to us. It just changes us. It gets us to stop talking a certain way, acting a certain way, thinking a certain way. That has had it happen so many different times. You put on this music for somebody who's struggling with things they're watching. They sit down in front of a computer screen. They put on Christian music. You're less likely to go click the next button over and pull your pants down. I'm just telling you, young men who struggle with those things, and as Christians, because we all know the statistics, right? It's the vast majority of people within the Christian church who are struggling with these things. You're not struggling. I will tell you, if you're putting on secular music that is glorifying these things, you're going to walk right down the path to doing those same things secretly, right? Rather than walking down a path of going, no, I can beat this thing. I can fight this thing, right? It is all about resisting, right? Doug has that shirt, resist, on right there. It is resisting these temptations. And I'm telling you, the music, whether you think it's coming from an artist like Kevin Max, who has walked away from the faith and his past music and DC talk, is still getting people to walk down in the light. And they're choosing to walk in the light when they choose to put that on rather than the things we have seen tonight. So I encourage the heads of the home, the fathers, to choose this for your homes and choose this for your lives, because if you can do this, it's going to trickle down to your wives. It's going to trickle down to your children. And then when they struggle with this, because we've all struggled with it, that they will come out more victorious than we have even come out. And so that's my encouraging words for tonight. And hopefully everybody takes my rant and says, hey, maybe we did something. So that is sound off for tonight. Tom, thanks so much for joining us. Johnny, as always, thanks for coming in. Even though you were late, we still just
big time late, bro. Big time late.
So I appreciate everybody. If you guys are still going to stay up tonight, make sure you guys go over to Through the Black right here on YouTube. They're actually streaming a premiere right now live on the channel. So go over there, jump in the chat. That's what Tom is probably.
It's over, but you can watch the
replay,
the archives.
Okay, great. So yeah, it was airing this whole time. So Tom, thanks so much. He was only supposed to say the first hour, but he gave us 2 hours. And Elijah, Doug, Johnny, Robbie, Ricky, and Mike.
Ricky and Mike, I was about to say. Yeah.
Bobby, Ricky, and Mike.
Yeah, there.
That new addition is hilarious.
Yeah. So
we're dating ourselves, boys.
That's okay. No. I appreciate everybody tonight. Thanks so much for the chat. Again, just a quick announcement at the end. Tom Dunn is going to be a speaker. Hopefully everything works out with that, as well as his co-host Vicky Joy Anderson will be doing a presentation at the virtual conference November 17th through the 20th. Elijah is working on a presentation, and Doug said he's going to be doing something again. He's the only speaker that hasn't had a show on our channel until this year, who spoke twice at Take on the World in person. Now, Tom doesn't really count because Tom's been there since day one, so I don't mean that. So, Johnny, the option is open, trying to get him to do a cool interview with us too for the conference, but it is going to be a blast. Virtual conference November 17th through 20th, so come hang out with us. And I want you to always remember, the deep state agent, Robbie Davidson, also known as the
I
Flat
have it
Earth.
laminated. The guy gave it to me as a gift, laminated. I was like, dude, thanks so much. It's awesome. I have it actually laminated as a gift, but one of the conference, the guy handed it to me. He's like, I wanted to get this for you. I'm like, thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah. He's also known as the Flat Earth Pope, if you didn't know that. So he's the Flat Earth Pope, Robbie Davidson, the deep state agent. This is a real Illuminati card you can buy.
There's a lot of piercings, man. I never had my ear pierced that many times.
Step it up, Robbie. Step it up.
Well, we're going to sign off tonight. Thanks, everybody, for being here tonight. And we will see you in just a few weeks.
Blessings
Good night,
all.
everybody.
Good night.
It's out.
Love you.
Peace.
Love you, Johnny.
Sound